Welcome back. We are the last event of the day. As the Danes say, we are the raisin at the end of the sausage, which I think sounds a little weird in English. Yes, there is some tradition about we're really big on pigs in Denmark, but I prefer to think of us, as the Irish would say, as the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. All right, so today, from your right to your left, we've got Lars from the Sociale Kapitalfond, which is kind of what it says on the box. Next to him, we've got Erik Allen from Rapp from Vækstfonden, the Danish growth fund. Again, a very useful name. You can figure that one out. We've got Poul Kellberg from Copenhagen. He'll explain as long as we go along what he does. At Yael Bassan, local hero of mine, who does. Is there anything you don't do? You started out with bicycles.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Sleep.
I do everything with bicycles.
Everything to do with bicycles. And then me, your host, Nick Hawtin from Think Legal Tech. All right. We've been talking about money today. Lots of it. In cash, in electronic form, here in the studio and online. All right. We are looking at the official title of our event is Social Impact Investments and Startup Challenges. And the first challenge I'd like to put out to you guys is that we've got a couple of investors here. You've got money. You need somewhere to put the money. We've got a couple of people here who've got places for the money to go. One of the challenges is finding somewhere to park the large amount of cash that they've got. So it's scaling up these impact projects, products, services to be able to absorb the amount of cash that's available. So I'm thinking if you could pitch in, first person to put their hands up takes it away. But it's how do we scale this up to fit the amount of money in that's available so that we can make the changes that need to happen. Whoa. Who'd like to go first before I point at somebody, Alan?
Lars.
Go ahead.
You pointed at me? Well, I guess I would start, first of all, by maybe switching it around.
Cool.
And saying that I don't think you should scale companies to fit the money available. You should build the companies the way you want to build them, and then find the company that's appropriate for the scale dreams that you have yourself. That's very important. I do think that there's a lot of money that is available for companies that are great opportunities. One of the things that we see in this world is, on an increasing basis, and Lars and I were just talking about it, is how do you actually measure an opportunity to invest in a company? It's not just finance anymore. There's more to it. There's social, there's climate. How do you do this? And this is becoming more and more on the radars of investors across the planet. So there is more and more money available, but I think it's very important that each entrepreneur take the start and position that they want to build the company that they dream of building.
And so you count something, get more of it is a classic one we talk about. So when we say impact, you say impact to people on the street, everybody's got a different impact, right? When we're thinking of impact, give us a couple of KPIs of numbers or things we're measuring. Grams of carbon sequestered, for example, if you're into that, or tons of CO2 removed. What are some things you're looking at that you see, whether you're looking at it or other people?
You know, it's a very good question. And I'd like to measure, first of all, there's a quantifiable and then there's a subjective impact. They're both very important. On the subjective impact, I believe fundamentally that every company needs to be building social impact into their business. Without doubt. It should be part of the marrow of their bones. It should just be natural, and they shouldn't do it because they're trying to get money from somebody with social money. That's one. On the quantifiable side, I spend most of my day looking at climate. It's true. And I'm looking at climate from an agri-food and energy perspective. I'm focused on agri-food. And we do measure, we look at, when we can quantify it, we do look at carbon. We are very, very aware of the challenges that we have on climate change, and also because carbon is something that you can actually quantify sometimes.
Yeah. What are some other examples of things where we're quantifying? Because one of the challenges we have in here, also, especially with impact, often it's like it's a Conamore project meets people, so it's people with the soft, I hate some of these words, but we are often speaking two different languages, stuff that fits in Excel and stuff that doesn't. I was just thinking some of these things we count. So let's see. So carbon, what else are you counting?
Well, all right. Well, first of all, this is a really, really interesting subject because almost 10 years ago when I started going on this mission of increasing levels of impact, social and then environmental, actually.
Okay.
When I was in the process with some others of working on a fundraising a number of years ago, this is 9 years ago now, 8 years ago, we hit this problem that investors looked at you either as alpha, as financial return, or as impact, which is philanthropy, but you don't put them together.
Yeah.
This is changing now, but a lot of investors, as soon as you start talking about impact, they think, okay, you go talk to somebody else. It makes it very challenging to raise money unless you find investors who understand that you can do both, and in fact, you should do both.
So on the alpha, to talk like how are we, grams of, see, tons of carbon / alpha. Help me here. How does that look on your spread? Not have to be your spreadsheet. We could talk generic. We could talk somebody else's spreadsheet we've seen. How it, like things we're measuring.
I think we need to talk a bit more generic than that because every company is different.
Yeah.
And it's you can try to standardize as much as possible, but every company is different. We were discussing this as well earlier. So I wish I could give you a binary number that says we measure 4 of this.
Oh yeah, no. I guess what I'm looking at is the examples. Is when you're sitting with your investment committees and you say yes to something, just a couple of maybe some examples of things that have made you click and say, yeah, you know what, bam, this is it. This is the.
Okay, well, I'm going to use a different analogy that I used with Lars earlier today. I'm going to say it's kind of hard to define what a horror movie is, but you know what it is when you're looking at it. And very often, I think when you're looking at companies where there is an impact, where there's a social impact and climate impact, before you even quantify it, you have this intuitive gut reaction that, yes, there is impact here. And then how do I define it? And actually, more importantly, how do we define it? And then it's a process of sitting down with a company and just looking together and asking, so how do you as a company, what's your mission? Sometimes you have a company whose very existence is driving impact and change, which makes it, the way you quantify that is when the company succeeds, impact is succeeding. So it's difficult to put a number on it. What you hear me is evading your question because I wish there were
that's all right.
a solid answer. But
there's people back outside, back home on the other side of those screen that should be picking up. This isn't easy. So there isn't a 12. Well, as long as you're 12.
So it's not easy, but what's very important is to find investors who are mission driven, number one.
Yeah.
And number two, who understand and really get it, that companies that are doing good business and that have an impact perspective will drive outsized returns on the financial side in the long term.
So listen, if you want to have an uphill climb with the person, you need the connection here as well as, let's say, on the numbers. And so if the person you're talking to, if this is the second or third meeting and they're still going, I don't get it.
Go somewhere else.
Exactly. Go somewhere else. Do not waste time on don't fall in love with a fund. Go for the person all right.
It's super important that you meet on values before you talk anything about numbers with an investor. And maybe we discussed this last time I was up here.
Listen, there are some evergreens that are worth repeating.
I'll say it again. It's super, super important that it's better to shut down your company than to get in bed with an investor who you'll be married to for 10 years, which is longer than most marriages last, who might make your life a living hell.
All right, so this is an excellent one. It's not everybody's dealt with investors, but most of us have had, a romantic relationship, at least by the time we reach our age. Yeah. And there is an awful lot more of us that is like dating, right? If you're swiping past the person on LinkedIn, on Tinder, but if this is, if you are not, there's got to be some chemistry there, right? Now you're definitely kind of more driven, or that's I always say like it's a pleasure to meet you because I feel like I've known you forever through social media.
But not Tinder though.
So I'm thinking,
no, I haven't met
you have a certain amount of passion. I'll say, definitely you burn through on social media with that. Your business isn't just about bicycles.
No, that's true.
Right. Okay. So, if we're looking at the return and the things that make it go, this passion, that quantifying, we're trying to reach of how to scale stuff and how to make.
Yeah. So what's very important to me is my staff and my, how do you say? Work relations in general, and everyone who rents my bikes, and that doesn't go too well together with investors, and that's exactly as you say, because when I talk to someone who I would like to grow the company together with, they always talk about money. But the problem is that if I should have a very, very, very high result on the bottom line, then it means that someone needs to lose something, and that would end up being either the world or my staff. And you can make it all like, even just if you talk about bikes, then it means bikes seem very sustainable and like a green thing, but the problem is that as soon as you start actually producing them, they will be produced under horrible circumstances, and you cannot really do anything about it. I get like 500 bikes a year, and it's impossible for me to change the world in that. And 98% of all bikes are produced, or at least all the parts are produced in China or Taiwan under circumstances I have no clue what is, to be honest. And then I go out and say, I have a sustainable green company, and people be like, yeah, sure you have, because it's bikes. But no one's actually talking about where it comes from. But if I start producing the bikes myself, then I won't have a business. So what do you actually do? So that's sort of it. It's also very difficult in my business. A lot of my competitors are not paying tax or not paying real salaries, which makes it really difficult. So when you compare all the different economies, then of course it will be easier to say that my economy is bad. But if you ask my staff, they will be the happiest people. I'm not paying like a fortune in salary, but I'm not paying myself either. I'm paying myself less than I pay my staff. That's like how I rule. But the thing is that my staff hasn't left me. They have been with me forever because they like to work with me. And that's what's important to me.
So you're looking at, employee satisfaction, you're looking at the love, right? You're looking at the people.
Yeah.
And that's what you're measuring in your company.
And it makes it very difficult to work together with investors that will always talk about money and will always talk about when they can get the
Unless you're finding an
return.
investor that is also focused on people.
It depends, because they will always focus on result. They can say whatever they want, but I don't really believe in it, to be honest. And I've talked with Vækstfonden as well, and then it came down to if we lost all the money, then I would lose my money, because my money is in the mother company, the head company, and that's everything I have. And I cannot lose everything I had, so I'd rather choose to just grow slowly, because to me, the faster you need to grow, the less, the more you'll actually end up losing, according to the people who work at your
I'm
company.
glad we're here, because you got an investor at the end with the word social in it. And so I'm thinking that, just strict financial return might not be everything that drives your company. Yeah? I've asked you to sort of come up with KPIs and give me some numbers, give me some things you're measuring. We've got we've got return on employee on staff capital. Throw that out there. Maybe we can sort of come up with some new KPIs here. But what's your reaction when you hear all money is interested in is the return?
I don't know Yael and her company very well. From what I hear, it's fascinating, and a fascinating person who runs it with a lot of energy. I think that's very cool. But if I'm to be very frank, I also think it's full of prejudice, what you're saying, against how some investors are and how other companies can be. I'll give you an example, right? So the Sociale Kapitalfond, the Sociale Kapitalfond, we're a social impact fund manager. So we develop financial products, investment products, with a dual or triple bottom line that help marginalized persons through education, through employment, through help aid devices, etc. And that can also give a financial return, right? One of the products we have, so to say, is a private equity fund that invests in established companies. That's where I do my daily work. We've invested in a company that's a little bit similar in the sense that to Yael's, in that it's not used bicycles, but it's reused computers. It's called Refurb. It's one of the leading refurbishment and resellers of used computers in Denmark. So basically, they will they'll buy all the old computers from Vækstfonden, and then they will, delete.
They're all old.
Stuff. Yeah, but we can reuse them, right? Because more and more, just like bicycles, computers can increasingly have a long life because more and more stuff live in the cloud, right? So you can delete all stuff on them. You can install new software, sometimes also new hardware, and then you can resell them. It saves a lot of CO2 just with the bicycles, right? Prolongs the life. This company, it's a growth company, they early on found out that people with autism are very, very good at running a lot of the procedures when you have to simultaneously delete the software on 300 computers using advanced software, right? You have to be very, very meticulous and strict. And the more they grow, the more people with autism they can employ, the more computers they can resell and hence save CO2. And besides the fact that this is a growing global growth market, there's a very, very clear social bottom line that's one-to-one with the financial bottom line. And by the way, as an investor, we at least know that somewhere between 80 and 90% of what we invest in are humans, are people. So if the people in the company thrive, they perform so much better on both bottom lines. So we also, you talk about KPIs, we look at like how many young persons with autism had a chance to educate themselves and be employed in the company, but we also help the company look at social well-being within the company and measure that, because when you're 10 people, right? But when you are 50, 60, 70, 80 people, you need tools to help, take the temperature and help and guide your leaders. Because we know that, if they are well, they perform well.
Yeah.
So it's not mutually exclusive, in my opinion. In many companies, it's mutually reinforcing.
One quick point here, just to add on to what Lars is saying. I think it's important to underline very quickly that sustainability is also financial sustainability. And if a company is not able to, at some point, sustain itself and grow financially, then the rest of it does move towards philanthropy and not sustainability. And then you're dependent upon others to create your future. So it's important to have both.
But you don't necessarily become like, you don't necessarily agree on how long time it takes to make that, to create that sustainability financially. Mm-hmm. And if someone wants a payoff within like 2 years, but you have a 10 years or 5 years plan, then it won't fit together.
Exactly. There's a lot of matching with goals and horizons. And I'd love to bring in Poul on this, because you've got a different take. I'd say, like, you don't have a physical artifact that you sell to people. Let's say like a bicycle. I see the bicycle. I know what the bicycle is. You've got money. Boom, it needs to turn into more money. Maybe it's money with a double bottom line. You've got humans. You've got people that have been in jail or have been in trouble with the law, or have had contact with the authorities. Right?
Say that.
And the name of the company, Come Back, it is what it says on the box. It is helping people come back to becoming productive members of society from having been incarcerated or otherwise, let's say, restricted. Cool. And so, like, how do you measure that? And how do you scale what you're doing? Because I can imagine it takes a lot of effort with an awful lot of these people. And it's very hands-on, very...
First of all, it takes a long time.
So you've got time.
Time is a very key factor in what we're doing.
So we're talking like, months, years, decades? Months?
Sometimes years.
Okay.
And what we're doing, a lot of what we're doing is working together with the system, with the social authorities and...
So scaling other resources, right? You're leveraging the public sector.
Yeah, on the one hand. On the other hand, we are creating businesses where we create jobs for our participants.
Like what kind of jobs?
Right now we have a gym, a training facility. We have a cleaning company where we clean and where we employ what do you call them? Women with second language.
Yeah.
We have right now we're working on a streetwear brand. So we're working on creating a streetwear brand made by street boys. So
right. I'm thinking FU for us by this model has worked well before.
Yeah.
So
what we're trying to do is to create opportunities for those boys we're having. They're offenders, and a lot of them are stigmatized by society, and the way back is long and
they might have
harsh.
been stigmatized before they went in too, right? Yeah.
And you can say when we are when we're helping somebody, we have a very high social impact, between 13 to 15% return of what you're investing in those boys. But the numbers we are, what do you call it, the succeed rate of how many we are getting through is a bit lower, because the complex mental issues they are having are...
So what's it's like recidivism, or the people that have committed a crime before they commit a crime again. What's the normal number? What's the standard number, and then what's your number? What is it roughly?
I'd say the normal number is probably in Denmark 60%. 60%.
So 60% end back in jail.
And the guys we're working with, about 50% are getting back to normal society.
Okay.
So that's, in some cases, it's a high rate, but everybody will come back, but it takes time. And how long time can you get what you call it, money to do your job?
Sure.
So that's the part of it. But when you help, you get a massive social impact because you'll save society money for a lot of years.
Right. Not only is there the money that you're not spending to put them in jail, there's the money that they're paying in taxes. So they go from being a cost to being a positive. Right. And so we're looking at, at investing in is how on earth does somebody scale your business because it is so hands-on? I mean, it's not about buying more software.
And right now we have we're in a process with this Compact Cleaning about finding an investor, and that's what you call it, an interesting case because I have a young man who used to be an offender who has a very nice company and doing good, and on the other hand we have somebody who wants to invest, and what do you call it, the conflict or
there's a culture gap.
Yeah, the culture gap is enormous.
Sure.
And they aren't speaking the same language at all. And that's an issue.
With this culture gap, I mean, there is, you say, one of the gaps that we're trying to bridge today is this gap between talking earlier, that one of the companies that was on stage earlier was talking about that part of their success was they understood the language of deals, and that they understood, they're dealing with sustainable, renewable energy, that they understood that if you were going to talk to a pension fund, you needed to be able to say yes to 50 million euro,
But the guy I'm working with, he knows the language of a deal as well. But
a different industry.
Different industry.
Right. You think, oh God, I mean, I've been dreaming about being able to tap into the creativity and the deal making and the risk management of that industry of, let's say, crime, and bringing that over into the light.
It takes time.
But All right. So this language, I was thinking of examples of translating between industries, or there must have been times where you've, for example, talked to somebody like Yael who says, all bankers are evil. I can say, having been born in London and grown up in London, Frankfurt, and New York, that there are an awful lot of shady characters in that business. However, there are also some good guys. So it's bridging this culture gap.
I think one thing that's very, very important that entrepreneurs of all types underestimate, and that's the importance of understanding who the investors you're talking to. What's driving them? How much money do they have? And realizing that these people are humans too, with their own foibles. They're driven by feed and greer and opportunity like other people as well, hopefully other things as well. If somebody has a billion euros to invest and they only have 4 people in their team, they have to make bigger investments because otherwise they'll never invest the money. So if you're looking for a smaller amount, try to find an investor who fits the profile for the size of the money that you're going for. Look at the, at the time frame. I think it's a really good point that you had, by the way, that companies that are trying to make more of an impact, social, climate, everything together, tend to be thinking more long term.
Right, that each investor, one of the things I always tell people is, you only need one investor. You don't have to sell to all of this. I keep going back to dating, but it's like most of us are, one, girlfriend or boyfriend is enough. I think dealing with more than, speak for yourself, but I always think there's an awful lot of work in managing one relationship. Managing 2 or 3 would be like, oh my God, I don't know how they do it. But you're only looking for what you only need to find one investor. That you only need to find one match. You don't have to appeal to all investors. So this, go,
yes,
match.
But the only but is that you have to kiss a lot of frogs.
You do have to kiss a lot of frogs.
You need to be a bee buzzing around a lot of flowers before you find that one.
Well, this is like Tinder. I mean, you do have to swipe through a lot of profiles.
Yeah, and you wanna swipe left on a whole bunch of them. But it's, I think it's really, really important to just keep that in mind. And very often, maybe when you're thinking about it, I don't know. I don't have the solutions here, but I think a number of philanthropic offices and family offices and foundations of private money that have been into philanthropy before, if and when they start to understand that it's okay to make profits, and in fact you should make profits, they may be more mission aligned, and they may be more willing to put in money than others who are coming from a point where they're always financially driven. I think it's a shorter journey for them to travel than it is for the finance people to travel.
When looking at money, it's just like looking at a customer. You sell bicycles and you rent bicycles. And so you understand people who want to buy bicycles and rent bicycles, and the product you works. You've got a good business. You've got a great location.
Not right now.
Not right now, obviously, because there's no tourists. But pre-corona and post-corona, once they start going by your corner, is at the end of Nyhavn. There is not a tourist that visits Copenhagen that doesn't at some point end up going by Nyhavn. Whether they're sober enough to ride a bicycle by the time they get there is a different question, but you got a great location, you got a great service, people love your product. And so I think it's often about understanding the investor. What do you think with your, you made a point before, and also like people understanding you, what do people need to understand about you to be able to tap into the cash?
I think there's a point in the fact that companies wanting investing, if we use the dating analogy, right? The more you know what you like and don't like, right? The easier all things equal get to find each other, right? Yeah. To swipe and stop swiping at the right time. And I think that as investors, right, it's our core duty to know what we're going for and to be open-minded in our dialogue with companies and to look for opportunities and to learn to speak a language that the kind of companies we look for also understand. And that takes time. But I also think, and that's maybe why I was a little bit provoked, and I know,
excellent.
What I know, you are very good at provoking people, and I was, don't mind provoking, I guess, but I was
sharing
a little bit,
passion is what we call it outside of Scandinavia.
Because that companies, and I know you're not looking for investors, right? But companies looking for investors, or I understand you're not looking for, but companies looking for investors also need to know that investors are different. And look for different kinds of investors at different times. And I think that's also important. It goes both ways.
Right. I see a lot of effect being created here. And if we could match it with money, there would be more effect. There would be more happy customers. There would be more. And you also, happy employees. You're also cool about bringing in all different types of people to work for you.
I do.
Right. The both of you are. Go. Right, you had a point.
I might seem skeptical, but to me, I have been looking for investors, and I chose not to at the end. To me, no matter how nice people seem like, they wouldn't be investors if it wasn't about money. That's the end goal. And I understand that there's difference between investors that are coming in with public money and investors coming in with private money. And there might also be some good ones in between the private ones, but there's not enough in the public for all of us green startups and companies. But my question is, it would be nice in some kind of way to be able to distinguish that, to have some sort of a goal, the companies have a bottom line in social, in the social part and in other parts than just the money-wise. It would be nice if the investors had as well, so we could actually see who they work with, because a lot of people like to talk about how green they are and how much they invest in all kinds of green things. But at the end, a lot of these green companies are not green, if you ask me. So to me, it just seems like talking and not really, it doesn't seem like with going on with the heart. It might be, but it doesn't seem like it. And I need a little bit more of that if that is real. Otherwise, I just need it to be clear, and that's also fine.
Did
that makes sense?
I mean, there's another point. There's a lot of social entrepreneurs, especially within the social service where I'm at, who are a lot of who are person-driven. So, what would Comeback be without me? And an investor would think, what would happen if Poul crashes in the
but there's a million startups that are the same thing, right? I mean, when you look at the people, or what you look at, the founder team is the key of it, right?
But it's still about money.
We're talking about scalability, to scale a company. And that's, it takes time. For me, it's taken 10 years, and I'm still struggling to scale up. And that's a hard job. And for people like you two guys, you think about, is it possible to scale it?
So a couple of comments to this. And the first thing is, with all respect for the mission that you're both on and the challenges and hurdles that you have to go through, for whatever it's worth, I've been back and forth across the table from being the investor to the entrepreneur over the past 20 years. And in my last startup, where it was a food company that I co-founded and ran for 4 years that had a social mission that we didn't shout about, but we hired people with hearing disabilities to work in our kitchen. And I met them through this gentleman over here, actually. because one of the guys who was one of my key people, who was the founder of that initiative. What we decided to do, though, was to success or failure was to focus on having that as part of the onion. When you peel it back, you find out we're a good company. And we also have a mission to show that people who are deaf are humans that actually are valuable members of society. And if you give them the right experience in the right environment, they can actually perform just as well as anybody else. But we didn't ask to be measured on it. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be measured on it, but I also feel that every company should have some aspect of social in what they're doing. It doesn't at all criticize companies that are driven from a social first perspective, because there's a huge importance and need for companies like that. And there's a need for investors that also understand that mission. Vækstfonden's a big organization. I can only speak for our team.
Yeah.
And I'm in agri-food, but...
Lars, go.
No, I think Yael, you have a very good point in calling, if you'll excuse my language, bullshit, right? On many agents in this field, right? I think that's a very good point. So my advice is basically, if you're an impact company and you're looking for impact investors, you should ask two questions. One of them is, how do you measure, manage, and set goals for impact in your investments? And the other is, do you have skin in the game? Is your money at stake as a manager when it comes to the social or green bottom line? I think you have a very good point about, there's a lot of talk about impact, but it's like something we measure afterwards and hope it's there, right?
Yeah.
So Nick, while you're writing, I'll just comment on what Lars said.
Go for it, yeah, because I'm in love with it.
I agree. And I also think that I cannot speak on behalf of all of Vækstfonden. We're more than 300 people now in the organization. I can speak for myself as an individual and as somebody who's on the team in Vækstfonden. When I meet other investors out there, I meet all different kinds. And I meet a bunch of them that are just blowing green air, but that don't even really understand what that means. And on the environmental impact side, it's the same thing as the social impact side in the same way. This is where I will circle back to finding out, and it's more than two questions, but it's a dialogue, and it's a discussion. Yeah. And if you sit down with an investor and they ask you, so what's your business prop, the first thing, then you might not be sitting across the right investor. I think it's really important to find people who are willing to give you the time of day and then get to know you. It's so easy to say because I don't have a list here of talk to these people. But when you find them, you will find them. And it could be family offices in other countries as well as Denmark.
Go.
But it's basically the same with everyone I've ever worked with. It's both investors or possible investors, but it's also customers being like, oh, we really want to work with you because you have good work conditions. Oh, the price is too high, I'm going to leave again. It's like, but you know, it's the same for everyone. If you really want to do a good
the supermarket, I mean, you can get pork chops for 5 crowns a piece, but don't count on that pig having had a good life.
Exactly. But so there's one thing that is like what you think and what you say out loud, and something else is action. And I totally believe that you guys are the good guys. That's not what we're talking about. I just need more of you. And I don't really see it. And there's more and more green startups, but there's just not enough investors. And to me, it's been really difficult the last year because of COVID. And people are like, when are you expecting the money to come back? And I'm like, whenever there would be tourists again. I'm not the government. I'm so sorry I couldn't tell you. Like, it could take 1 year, it could take 10 years. No one knows. It depends on the pandemic. So, and then people will be like, oh, but you have to prove that you'll find money soon. And I'm like, then I need to change my whole company. And that's a little bit difficult. It's not impossible, but then it's just not the same we're dealing with. So I just chose to be by myself, and that's fair enough. And that wasn't only the cause. It was also this thing about what you talked about with being together for several years. It really needs to be a good match. And as soon as people are asking me that question, when it's completely obvious, I'll be like, oh, it will be too hard, you know, because I didn't choose to make COVID.
So these are more questions that you can ask. You can ask them, are you an evergreen investor?
Yeah.
Or are you investing from a closed fund?
Yeah.
And if you're investing from a closed fund, what's the lifetime? There are lots of questions you can ask to get an idea without even asking them directly. Are you mission-driven and long-term, just to find out by asking other questions?
Sure.
Vækstfonden, which it means a growth fund, it's a sovereign Danish investment fund. So we're backed by the Danish government. We just got an allocation recently of 10 billion Danish crowns, about 1.4 billion euros, in Vækstfonden and the Green Investment Fund under the umbrella to invest in green change transition. And this sounds beautiful. It's a very complicated thing. I was part of the strategy team that was helping work on that. But my point was just that money, the idea is that the investments in sustainable change are going to be reinvested. So the returns are going to be reinvested. If we don't have a financial return, we cease to exist at some point. Unless there's more money coming from heaven. And this is why I say this because it's a combination of, I mean, we're maybe on that side, it's one kind of investor. Your business is an important kind of business, and there are investors for your business. And it sounds so easy for someone to say, because I know you're struggling for a while. So.
Go.
But I also think I think the cases of the two of you, Poul and Yael, are kind of like good testament. And, you know, especially your company, I don't know very well, right? I pass it and go like, I wish there were more tourists. But what I want to say is that I think that it's testament to the fact that we are so not done with social finance innovation, right? I think there's, I mean, in a Danish context, it's kind of like a, you know, plus minus 10-year-old kind of like phenomenon. And it took, like, if you look at microloans in emerging markets, right, that took 20 years and X billion dollars to develop, right? And it's not, probably not, I'm sure that if you really know about it, you'll say, and by the way, it's really not done yet, right? So we're not done developing new tools that can help. Because what we're looking at is basically scaling social and environmental impact on a sustainable basis, right? Because that is on a market-driven basis, because that's what that's what the social businesses are about, right? And we are not done, I think, yet. It should kind of like be an encouragement, right? To go out and innovate for all of us investors, to see what else can we do, right?
So, I mean,
to come up with
there was a massive process. I mean, one of the questions that was asked of the last panel was, you know, was how can people find you? How can people help you? I think this conversation today would be a tragedy if this conversation ended with the live feed here. You know, is that we got, you know, there is so much education on both sides of, you know, the challenges and how it looks from the company's side, how it looks from your side.
And I have some education for Lars as well, so.
Exactly. Absolutely.
That was not a physical threat. That was part of the gym and the boxing, which is a remarkable sport.
Another point also, for whatever it's worth, and it's not worth much, but I increasingly do not believe in just a financial bottom line. No. I just don't know yet how to quantify the other part of it. And Lars and I were having a discussion outside earlier about this too, because there's no one size fits all. And we are also, in Vækstfonden, we're struggling also with how do you quantify green impact?
Yeah, exactly.
How do you, what is green? How do you know green?
Exactly.
It's like the horror movie, except that it's the opposite, right?
Yeah.
But this is something that we struggle with all the time, and that we're still on the learning curve, and we're still figuring that out. And unfortunately, it's not going fast enough in that sense. But
cool. But more fora and places, ways for us to get together and share what it is we're doing and the challenges we're facing, and also the effect that we can achieve. Because I think a lot of the times with you guys, where, for example, you're like, you know, well, I'm not interested, you know, what I'm not producing is money, but I'm producing really happy staff. And then you start talking about the people you're getting in the door as your staff, and all of a sudden, with network, we've got guys that don't sit at the table, people going, well, you know, my friend so-and-so, or I know somebody that you should, and then we bust out the telephones, which is something that the Nordics get a little bit better at, which is, here's a telephone number of somebody you need to talk to, because you know what, exactly what you do is exactly one of their KPIs. You know, or explaining just, you know, the double bottom line of, you know, not only does this get cleaning companies, this is not a fabulously well-paid business or something that generates huge revenues unless you're at scale like ISS. At the same time, you know, if you're getting somebody off welfare and onto work, that's a double win. So it actually achieves a very significant financial result, let alone if they're not in jail. So sometimes by getting people to help you out with the Excel, or, I mean, a lot of this value creation gets developed in dialogue with each other.
Well, on that note also, just getting to know us, and now I know you and I know you. And it doesn't sound like much, but I'm meeting investors all the time. I'm meeting family offices all the time. And it could be that I meet a family office that's not focused on what I'm focused on, but they're looking at something which I just know about Copenhagen Bicycles, or I know about Comeback. And this is where these kind of events right here are so important because,
But it's just like a lot of social startups and green startups, they are working with the heart, and they don't know too much about financials. That's not why they're there. And then suddenly the investors come and ask for a very long-term financial plan, and it's really difficult to tell. And sometimes you don't need to scale it in the same way as the investors want, and it's really difficult to define it. And it's really difficult also to define from the investor side what they mean when they say social impact or green companies, because to be honest, I know some companies that Vækstfonden are working with that I don't define as green. So it's really but you would mean it's green. So someone needs to some kind of, write it down and define that's what we mean, and that's why we choose this company as a green company. So at least you can ask questions to it, and you can get a dialogue about it, because it might be a good purpose anyway.
Here, I just have to add now that Vækstfonden is also here to drive socioeconomic returns in Denmark, which means companies that also can create employment are also part of the focus area of Vækstfonden. I focus on agri-food space, but Vækstfonden has a bigger mission than that.
Yeah.
But I hear you.
But there's also a lot of free stuff in some of these companies. But anyway, that's a longer story.
No, but it's about starting the dialogue and connecting people and going on with it. I'll say one thing. I was loving to hear what you were going to call their businesses, because one of the things, when you go to a lot of these events, you meet a lot of people and you're trying to help people connect. I always think the people that have the very long description of what they do are killing themselves, because we'll bump into each other on the way to the bathroom. And I would think people talk about elevator pitches. It's the on the way to the bathroom pitch, whereas you got to get over at buy the beers is, the gal with the bicycle thing with the happy employees. Yeah, over there and go and talk to them. And if you've got that, the bicycle thing with the happy staff, right? Or the boxing thing with the keeping people, getting people that have been in prison back on the right path. That guy is over there. If you've got a super short 7-word description, 5-word description of what it is you do, and it is that person, and then connecting and making that connection happen.
Guy, flat nose.
Voila, the guy with the flat nose, exactly. The boxer guy, you'll recognize, right? Super. And another quick tip, wear bright color. Excellent. Fellas, we can do a little bit better with the dark blue and the black.
Should have warned me.
And I will admit, that for some of us, this is, maybe beyond help.
Next time, Hawaiian shirt, I promise.
He's wearing green pants, though.
He is wearing green pants at a green event. That is a very good point. And green's all right. It's a dark color. We could go with that.
You didn't notice? I'm wearing this because it's a green event. You should also.
I thought about wearing red pants this morning. And then I thought, no, it's going to be too, presumptuous, right? Or, too wannabe-like,
too
right?
Swedish, right?
Too wannabe-like, right? He thinks he's social, he's wearing red pants, so I just took the...
All right, well, green is good, but red pants is also good. All right.
For the record, I think this is the 4th or 5th time I've worn a shirt with a collar in a year. So it's...
Well, you're an investor, man. You're out of uniform. You should got that Patagonia vest. Well, how am I supposed to recognize you as the money guy? All right, cool. Well, listen, we... How to achieve scale, what to count. There's been some good ones here. I was just going to say, well, how are we doing on time? We're quit talking, stop. This is time to get. All right. There's some very, very tasty beer right around the corner. For those of you at home, that's part of you being at home. However, I'm sure you can get some delivered or buy some at a shop near you. We're on our way out for a drink. It's the end of the day. The pot of gold at the end of the rainbow was us. You're welcome. See you again tomorrow. Thank you very much.